Hello everybody, welcome to this other side project of mine, where because I love thrillers and horror and suspense far beyond the work of one Mr. Stephen King, and yes, the next video is coming. I will reach the talisman, I swear. I am going to talk, rant, rave, review, and sometimes recommend horror stories, comic books, movies, TV shows, and everything in between for you guys as I draw. I will be completely honest. Originally, I was planning to wait until I had done the talisman video to start this, but then something happened. Something that hadn't happened in a long time for me, and well, things couldn't wait as I ranted hey sears off with my rage until she made it quite clear that I just had to record it to get it out of my system. What happened was the movie Old. Not the fact that the movie is bad, no, I mean it is bad. It's just that that is not the reason to be angry. But that, for the first time in a long time, I was watching a movie where the ending not just didn't work at all, but also once you start picking on it, it ends up destroying the whole movie. Spoiler alert! I will be dissecting the movie's end and so-called twist, as well as the Sandcastle graphic novel that was the sort of basis for the movie. So if you haven't seen or read any of them, this is your chance to go and do so. Then, if you want, please come back and, like, subscribe, all the things. So, what is Old about? A family goes on vacation to a paradise resort, and spending a day on a private beach, they discover that they are aging rapidly, about 2 years per hour, and that they can't leave. So, together with some other people who happened to go to the same beach, they have to find a way out before they die of old age. Told like that, it sounds like a fairly decent Twilight Zone episode, right? Maybe not one of the best, but at least one you don't skip on reruns. We have an interesting mystery, as we don't know why the beach acts the way it does, and a fairly common lesson about not letting life pass you by without enjoying it. At least, that is what the graphic novel kind of is. Sandcastle, by Pierre Oscar Levy and Frederick Peters, has more or less the same premise. The biggest difference are that in this case the families arrive directly to the beach, as it's their yearly vacation spot. One of the kids that got adapted out in the movie even has his growth charted on a sign at the beach, proving that the family had been there before without any ill effects. And that there is a weird commentary on French racism against Muslim refugees, as one of the beach victims is an Arab refugee. Oh, and that being a French-Swiss graphic novel, there is a lot of nudity in the book. Not sexualized nudity, which is great given that about half the cast starts between 30 and 14 years old before the fast aging, but nudity nonetheless. And then there's also minors having sexual activities, and while it is supposed to be plot relevant, it doesn't change the fact that for most readers it's not something you want to see. It also ends quite grimly, with everyone except for a character that was literally born the day before at the beach, dead of old age. There is no explanation why, no reason really. It just happened and left the readers with a lesson that, instead of thinking on how to avoid death, we should appreciate life, short as it may be. Life is short. Deal. Or, as I said, a fairly decent episode of The Twilight Zone. There is a strange moment that should have been edited out, in my opinion, where the group sees a child, the kid from the resort, run towards them and get shot by unseen snipers. The thing is, the resort is never mentioned before side page. We have no idea how the group knows the kid, named Jesus here. We'd never know who killed Jesus, and it's never mentioned again. While I know the page is there because originally Levy and Peters were toying with the idea of explaining the beach and the situation, to be perfectly honest, it should have been edited out of the final product. In general, the novel would have been benefited by a better editor. But then, Shyamalan happened. To be precise, his daughter gave him the novel as a gift, and he liked it so much that he decided to buy the rights to make a movie. And since the last time he got involved in a project because his daughter liked the source material was Avatar: The Last Airbender, we should have known things were not going to end well. Honestly, there's almost nothing past the premise of Beach Makes You Old that the movie has in common with the graphic novel. Where in the novel people die of old age, in the movie everyone outside the main family dies horribly due to either illnesses they had before, trying to escape the beach, or being murdered because I'm sure someone thought that watching people die of old age wasn't exciting enough. The subtle job at racism in the graphic novel, where the characters originally side-eye an Arab refugee named Amsan as the probable cause of the first death, and at least one of them, who happens to be suffering from Alzheimer's, gets a bit violent with him until he just forgets and goes on building a sandcastle until he dies, becomes a very overt plot point in the movie where the Arab becomes a black rapper with the laughable name of Mid-Size Sedan, and the Alzheimer's sufferer becomes a violent schizophrenic who kills him during a hallucination, despite the fact that previously the movie had established that wounds healed instantly in the beach to the point that they had to do a surgery, while the flesh was healing around the knife and the fingers of people trying to help. Racism, powerful enough to break the laws of nature in a movie. All that was bad enough. And that's not getting into the surprise pregnancy that pretty much makes clear that there were two 16-year-olds, mentally 3 and 5, having sex off camera. But not the worst movie ever. Just another bad Shyamalan adaptation. However, all that went off the window when the final twist happened. Once everybody except the two younger kids died, they find, in the most contrived way possible, that there is a way out, through a tunnel in the coral that surrounds the cove. And after a fake out where we think that the kids, now in their 50s, drowned, we get to know why all this happened. No, not why the beach makes you old. That is something that is never explained, even if there are a few theories thrown around. But why the characters were sent there to die. See, the Paradise Resort they went to is a front for a big pharmaceutical company. They all were chosen because each family had at least a member with a chronic incurable illness. To be precise, Priska, the wife, had a benign tumor. Charles, a doctor, had schizophrenia. His wife, Crystal, suffered calcium deficiency that made her bones brittle and break easily. Patricia, the wife of a nurse, had epilepsy. Mid-size Sedan had blood clotting problems. And the girl who drowns early on and has no name had a kidney problem. As soon as they got there, they were giving a personalized cocktail with an experimental drug for the illness, and then sent the next day to the beach so that they could speed run the clinical trial and get the drug out for sale as soon as possible. My first thought was, oh god, this was so telegraphed that I hoped I was wrong. My second thought was, really? We're getting Bath Pharma is doing speed trials for drugs by killing lots of people as a plot device in 2021? Who thought this was a good idea? Because honestly, that's the last thing we need when we have an actual pandemic and a current problem of people not wanting to take a life-saving vaccine because they don't trust Big Pharma and they did the trials too fast. But once I started to calm down, I started to think about what was said and what was being implied, and the plot simply unraveled on me. Because see, they mentioned it was Trial 73, which means if each group had about 6 or so people, we're talking about at least 463 people dead on the beach. So how come no one has noticed? Yes, they claim that the group can erase the tracks of people so that no one knows they were there, but Priska found the result of the internet, and she was chatting on Instagram with the man she was cheating her husband on. People talk to each other about their attention. Crystal was a model, and she was also taking pictures of herself, so I assume those pictures went on her Instagram. It is impossible to think that no one thought, hey, so-and-so said they were going to this resort and they haven't come back, and then posted it on internet and then compared that to others and realized people disappeared there way before we get to the 3 digits disappearances. seriously, just you can erase an Instagram account, but the followers would go, hey, what happened to this famous person? Mid-sized sedan is a celebrity to the point that Maddox, the little girl, recognizes him, even when he should have been already old, but I will talk about that a little bit later. So 460 people, including a sci-fi writer, according to a diary they find later. That's way too many people to not be noticed by someone. And as I was trying to make sense of how 463 people could disappear and no one cared, that made me think about the trials themselves. Because if we're thinking about 6 people per group, each with completely different illnesses, we're not talking about a good test group. You need more than one with the same illness, you need a control group, you need to consider the outside factors, and rapid aging is one hell of an outside factor. So every result they get, which by the way are only by outside observations since they can't go and pick the dead bodies to do autopsies, are completely useless. Hell, because it's only observation from afar, they have no way of knowing if their medicines help it or make things worse, like, for example, with Charles' schizophrenia. Because no matter what Shyamalan seems to think, schizophrenics don't go around killing everyone they don't like, not even if they are not medicated. It requires something more to make a mental health patient become that violent, and they are usually more likely to be victims of violence rather than the other way around. Even the fact that they celebrate they found a cure for epilepsy since Patricia didn't get a seizure until after 10 hours in the beach, seizure that, by the way, killed her, is absurd, given that when we meet Patricia, she gets a seizure at the resort's breakfast, which by their own rules should be around 12 or 24 hours after she got the experimental medicine. So they cured nothing. And again, outside of stressors like, say, watching your husband die drowning and kids getting old really fast may have contributed to seizures. Just saying. And while I was chasing that thread, I realized the pharmaceutical company is actually running a resort. It's not just a front. It's filled with guests who are not part of the clinical trials, and one of them ends being the cop that arrests everyone because he was there chilling and jurisdiction is not a thing in Night Shyamalan's world. Why are they risking witnesses that may remember those who disappear? I mean, seriously, taking away the famous people like Big Mid-Sized Sedan and Crystal, the Instagram model, everybody will remember the black lady who got a seizure in the middle of breakfast. It was kind of noisy. So, is the drug business so bad that they need to also run a high-scale resort? What are their Yelp reviews? 3 stars, good weather, but my kids went through puberty as we were there and it was a kind of nightmare. Come on! Which then brought me to, how did the pharmaceutical company discover the pitch, since they didn't create it? I mean, yes, sure, someone could have stumbled there and died of old age, as in the novel, but how did someone else know? It would require someone getting there, getting old fast, figuring out the super secret exit before being too old to be considered a crazy man with a crazy story outside. How? And see, that is the problem with explaining certain things in horror and sci-fi. In the novel, there is no big conspiracy, so we don't have to think about why the families don't get hungry or their hair doesn't grow out. We just know that they are suddenly getting old and that there is a big force field that keeps them in, and that's it. Okay, yes, the kids' hair grows in their, the less we say about that, the better, but other than that, hair doesn't grow, we don't care. But the movie goes out of its way to explain every little single detail. They got there because it's a resort. They got there because the manager recommended the place to them. And given that right before they were talking about how the family got different plans for the day, as in everybody was going to do something different. One wonders why they didn't just spare the kids. They just sent the parents there. I mean, yes, because you see, they sent them with a lot of food, so the resort knew they were sending the kids to die. So as I said, why didn't they keep the kids? I mean, yes, sure, they'd be orphans, but at last they would be alive and young, and they could always say, oh, you see, your parents probably drowned, we never found the bodies. That's it. Still would not make sense with the other 461 people, but again, yes, it is frustrating to not have the answers we want about the beach, since that was the question the movie was pointing at. It was not, what would you do if your life was only one day? It was, why your life is only one day. But it is better than realizing that no matter how you slice it, the story makes no sense at all once you start thinking about it, even if you allow for the magic beach that only ages people if it's plot appropriate, because I forgot to mention, mid-sized Sedan arrived to the beach at least 4 hours earlier, and he didn't age a day. I mean, he doesn't even get visible wrinkles before he dies, and they do make a joke about it, but come on, that is just makeup failure. So don't watch. Seriously, don't. Don't waste your money, and if it comes to your streaming service of choice, skip it for something that won't make it feel as if you had years sucked out of you. The novel is disturbing, yes, and not to everyone's taste. It wasn't mine. But at least it works and doesn't contradict itself 5 seconds in, so if you are curious about how someone can stretch "it's astounding, time is fleeting" into 100 pages, it's not that bad. But the movie, hard pass. I want to thank my dear patrons, Mitch Hyman, Elaine Ho, and Jessic, as well as my first supporter, Tanya Pineda, for their support on making this video. I also want to remind you that if you want to support this and my other projects and get your name mentioned in the credits all the time, you can do so at patreon.com/Alisa, with a link on the description, as I know my name can be hard to spell. And with just $1 a month, you will always be thanked here in my videos, as well as get access to a ton of art before anyone else, and get the chance to suggest future subjects for videos. If you can't support me this way, I also accept likes, subscriptions to the channel, comments so that the algorithm catches engagement, and of course, you sharing the links. I will also welcome all your questions, comments, and suggestions in the comments below. This was Alisa Zarate, and remember, there is not a problem in a horror movie that cannot be solved with more chainsaws.